Get out the way. What do you mean, ew? Hello, all, and every single one of you. Now, this is probably a change of pace. You're probably having that generic viewer comment of, you don't look how you sound like. Probably not, but I know I look handsome. Anyway, this is definitely a change of pace. I'm finally trying to get out of my comfort zone and like show my face a little bit more, because that's one of my crippling anxieties. So there's that. Anyway, this is a semester report for fall 2024. Why am I doing this? Content. Kind of moving my hands a lot. Am I making too much eye contact? I don't know. In the last semester report, I was very thorough. I went over my classes and talked about a whole bunch of like things that we did, assignments and etc. But this time there's a lot going on. And to keep this video from going on an unwatchable amount of time, I'm just going to stick to one central theme and or story, which was basically a friendship that I've gained. Hey, buddy. So this semester, I'm just going to go over a very specific story and keep a central theme and idea in mind, okay? My cat's name is Doc Mitchell, by the way. He's named after the first NPC you see in Fallout Vegas. But that aside, first I want to talk about like what I did before the semester started, which was talk to my advisor. We talked about how he basically came up to me and said like, okay, Ryan, you're talking about how you're trying to graduate in spring 2025 next year. Okay, you need these classes. He brought up like a handful of classes. The two biggest ones were 420 and 430. So he brought out 420 and a whole bunch of other classes and said, Ryan, these classes are required. I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. 420 and these other classes are required. And then he brought up another class, 430, and said, but you need to have 430. I'm like, okay, yeah. And so my understanding was that like, okay, 420 is required for me to graduate, so I can either take that this semester or next semester. But 430 is needed, so I need to do that now, at this very moment. Ima desu yo. So I started making up my schedule. I set up a whole bunch of classes, etc, etc. And this was around the time where I was like, you know, getting ready to actually start the semester. So I was getting ready to quit my job. I was getting ready to like get a whole bunch of stuff that I've been wanting to get to build up more of my social media presence. So typically, I'm a very frugal person. Sometimes I'm a little on the cheap side, but frugal, right? Like I try to make sure I always have like a financial cushion, but it's gotten to the point where even my friends would tell me like, hey Ryan, you're so focused on like that financial security that is stopping you from like enjoying yourself and like spending time with other people. It's like, okay, yeah, I guess you're right. I see where you're coming from. And so I tried to tone that down. Unfortunately, that did not work out in my favor, because 3 weeks after the semester started, typically where I am reimbursed for financial aid, that did not go into my bank account. Like, okay, yeah, that's weird. So I talked to the financial aid office. I go to them like, hey, you know, typically I have money at this time. Like, why haven't you guys like reimbursed my account yet? They said, oh, Ryan, you ran out. And I'm like, okay, did I like run out of time? Like, what's going on here? Like, no, you ran out of financial aid. And so I'm looking at them like, what that can happen? Yes, that indeed can happen. Luckily, this problem wasn't as bad as it was originally presented to me, because, you know, I did run out of financial aid, but I still had enough for the rest of the academic year. My problem in that moment though was that my financial aid didn't cover the rest of that semester. So it paid for most of the classes, but some of it went into debt and that I had to pay off, and you know, etc, etc. There was a whole bunch of financial things. I had to get like another loan, which isn't great, but that was mostly taken care of. And it created this scenario where I had the option to pull financial aid from next semester to help me out with the current, and it was either that or working myself to the bone until I survived. So I'm a bleed now, cry later type of person, and that's like a mentality I picked up in high school in JROTC. What that means is, whatever you're going through, go through it. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, get over it. It's more so, okay, mourn after you're done, grieve after you're done, get through all of your work first before the worst case scenario happens. So that was my idea. And also, the devil I knew was better than the devil I don't know. I knew everything I was going through or was going to have to go through that semester, but I didn't know what was going to come next semester. A little bit of a side note, my religion, Christianity, like, I wouldn't say it's necessarily important to me per se, but more so it is like an integral part of me. Like, it's a part of my identity. And I don't really have the best faith as a Christian. Like, do I believe in it? Yes. Do I have faith in it? Not necessarily. Completely different thing. I remember this one quote Vadividya said in a Dark Souls 3 lore video, where he basically said, "The strongest faith is blind," or something along those lines. And I realized that that's probably why I don't have the easiest time, with religion compared to like other people. Maybe half of that is for the better, maybe half of that is for the worse. That's besides the point. And so I created a system because I'm a very analytical, logical person. One coincidence is just that, a coincidence. Two coincidences, that's a miracle. Three coincidences, that's a sign, right? And so right after I leave financial aid office, I'm just chilling in the campus center, blah, 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 going through my Twitter, going through like social medias, just trying to like filter out the noise. And so this don't bite that for it. And so I'm just sitting in the campus center until this Asian man comes up to me, a Korean man, and he taps me on the shoulder like, "Oh, hey, you interested in Bible study?" And the main reason, admittedly, is because I'm working on a capstone where Christianity is like a big part of it. And so, I never really like took the time to like actually read the Bible in my adulthood. Yeah, sure, I'll come and Bible study to you. And, to me, that was like a very chance encounter. Like maybe that's a sign because it already met the rule of three. This situation happened, I came here, this person just so happened to see me. Okay, that's a sign. Sure, I'll do this. And that's a mantra that I've been sticking to throughout the semester. And this leads me to a second chance encounter where I met a really good friend. And this person is the main character. This is my story. They're the main character. I'm okay with that. You guys are going to see why later. But I met this kindred spirit in one of my classes, right? Great person. Like we have the same enthusiasm when it comes to games in the industry. We both are Christians, and that's also like an important part of our identity. But more than all of that though, I just really respect this person because even though we're very similar in a lot of ways, the way I see this person is like they're like an inverse of me or like a parallel version of me where like I'm a person who wears many hats, crowns as I say, because I have a lot of skills, I have a lot of talents. I went to school for a variety of reasons to the point where my professors and other advisors would be like, "Why don't you have a specialization? This is crazy." But that's besides the point. Where I'm a type of person who just has a lot of skills, they were the type of person who is good at managing skills or managing other people more specifically, because I'm a do-it-yourself type of person, but they are really good at project management and just getting people where they need to be, being able to like scope out an entire idea and just work on it. That's something that I just respect just because of how much I struggle with that, and like seeing that person working that way, I'm like, oh, great A, you're great. But another thing is that I also appreciate their go-getter attitude, right? Because I remember we were just talking, and she was all like, "Oh, hey Ryan, I'm gonna buy a game studio." I'm like, "Ah, that's nice, that's cool. I am too." And then like a month later, she did it. And understand, I'm not surprised that she did it. I was surprised that it was done. Does that make sense? So like I talked to her like, "Wait, how did you do that?" Because I was under the impression that buying a studio was an entire process that required a lot of money and financing and stuff like that. And I talked to her, she was all like, "Nah, I just applied online, paid the money, and it was done." Like, really? No fooling. Okay. But anyway, moving on. So like, moving on to the actual classes, after listening to my advisor, like, okay, I need this class, but these other classes, as long as I just take the classes, it's fine, whatever, right? So the main classes that I needed was multimedia production and portfolio development. Multimedia production, that was basically group projects, the final boss. I did not like that class one bit, or I did not like that class. It was very stressful, but I got through it. And then portfolio development, this class is basically like learning how to market or sell yourself professionally in the industry, or at least in the creative industry, gaming industry more specifically for my specialization. And essentially I just made my website. Like I've made a website for myself before, but that was more so just an assignment I had to do. For portfolio development, when I was making it, I told myself like, okay, imagine that this is your website. Like you're actually going to use this, Ryan. So like whatever you do it in a way that makes it seem like it's final, right? And what I did come up with, I actually love. Like the thumbnail for my webpage, like the image that you see of it when you like go to it, Muy magnifique, so good it transcends languages. Another class was TTRPG class, which is where I met my friend actually. We basically just play D&D for a grade. I'm joking, there's a lot more to that. It's like an actual educational side of TTRPGs and like that culture, how that came about, but you do play it. And that was my biggest appeal, and I knew I'd be good at it. I was. 2 classes that I took for myself was sequential storytelling, or a comic class where I had to make a whole comic, and then music theory, because music for the past year have been a skill that like I've had, but not a talent where I feel that I'm comfortable enough to say like, hey, I'm a musician. So I took that class to like level up that skill, you know, so to speak. Eventually in like my portfolio development class, and like when everything was finalized, finishing the last assignment or getting ready to finish the last assignment, I made an appointment with my advisor, and this was like around like December 5th or December 4th probably, whichever Thursday that was. When I scheduled that appointment with my advisor, you know, I was thinking we were gonna do a victory lap. Like I thought I was gonna walk into his office, he's gonna turn around and be like, you did it. It did not go like that. I walk up to his office like, hey bro, you ready to like finish the year out? Like, I really appreciate you, man, like advising me throughout this entire thing. Like, man, I gotta thank my family, but I gotta thank you too. What's up, man? What's up? Like, how we gonna finish this? Like, what class do I gotta take now? What's up? Come on, let's do this. And like, he just looking at me like, look at me in a way that like, you about to tell somebody some bad news, and like you trying to figure out a way to not hurt the feelings, but you can't. I'm like, oh, I don't like this energy. What's going on? Like, why are you looking at me like that? Like, Ryan, I told you to take 430. Like, what? No, you didn't. He said that in a way that made me go like, okay, he's definitely not lying. But I did not remember that conversation at all. Like I said earlier in this video, he said these handfuls of classes are required for me to graduate. Specifically, those were his words. But then this other class, but then this other class, you need to take it. Because he put emphasis on it, that made me go like, okay, so that means this one particular class needs to be taken this semester, but these other classes, it could be either or. So, you know, was that my misunderstanding? Was that his miscommunication? That did not matter. And like, okay, well, I missed a class and, you know, it's required, then I'll just take it next semester. It's like, no, Ryan, it's only available in the fall. Like, okay, I understand the situation now. Like, that's the problem. Okay. But bleed now, cry later. We're in this situation. How do I get out of it? Like, obviously, I didn't create this situation just to be cute. So what do I have to do to like fix this now? So he's just looking at me like, oof. Until eventually he's like, okay, Ryan, I don't want to get your hopes up, but it is potentially possible for you to get 430 as an independent study. I'm like, okay, what's an independent study? And an independent study is basically like, it's basically homeschool but for college, with a bit more caveat. Like, if you're trying to like study something specific, then like you need a mentor to make sure that you're actually meeting the requirements or criteria to obtain that credit, right? So that was the independent study. He basically said like, hey, as long as you just do what you would have done in that class, and as long as the mentor is like keeping tabs on it, then like that could work. But like, it is very difficult for you to get an independent study for this class. Like, okay, well, you know, that's fine. Like, all I need is a chance. Like, I appreciate that by itself. And he's like, okay, so he talked to me like, hey, go talk to your TTRPG teacher, because, you know, he's the one that was running the class that I needed, that I missed. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll talk to him. And, you know, TTRPG, I would first like to say thank you, Baldur's Gate 3, for making me more familiar with Dungeons & Dragons, or actually getting me into Dungeons & Dragons. Because I remember there was a lot of students, a lot of classmates who didn't understand the rules so much, so I went out of my way to like make a guide for them. And like after that, they was all like, oh my gosh, Ryan, like you really broke down the mechanics like really well. Like, you should actually like make that video like public and stuff like that. And I thought about it. And not to say that I was the MVP of that class, but like a lot of people like really appreciated me. And you know, when I talked to my professor, it was like before when I talked to my professor that day, but like before I even got a chance to speak, like, oh my gosh, Ryan, like, man, like you're so great, man. Like I really appreciated that video that you made for the class around the beginning of the semester. Like, did you know that I made an extra credit assignment specifically based on what you did? Like, because like he doesn't hand out extra credit like it's candy, but like he has categories of extra credit. Like, he created an uncategorical category of extra credit because of me. And it's like, so he's just talking about like, oh yeah, Ryan, what do you need? What do you need? So I'm talking to him like, oh yeah, so like, apparently I missed this really important class, but you're the professor for it. I was hoping you can mentor me for an independent study. And so like, yeah, sure, Ryan, whatever you need, I'll do whatever I can, like to the best of my ability. It's like, oh yeah, so like I need 430. and you guys remember Shaolin Showdown? Like that one scene when like Omi lost the Eye of Dachi and like their senseis are like, oh Omi, just because you lost a magical item, it doesn't mean it's the end of the world. But I'm kind of curious, what item did you lose exactly? Like, oh, I lost the Eye of Dachi. Like, ooh, bro, that's the end of the world. Like, oh. And so like he looked at me like, 430. Ryan, that is the only class you can't take an independent study for. I'm like, what? No. Professor, don't tell me that. Come on, man. And so like he's seeing the despair in my eyes, like, okay, look, I'll see what I can do. We're gonna talk later tomorrow, you know, etc. etc. Like, okay. I slept on it, went back to campus, you know, he got me into this office and like, you know, private office, so it can be like, just in case whatever bad news he had to tell me, I would be able to vent without being criticized by the rest of my classmates, because it really did get off the energy like he was gonna give me some very bad news. I'm like, okay. Okay, I see where this is going. So like, you know, I go into the office. You know, he sits me down. It's like, Ryan, look, bro. Like I said, I made an entire extra credit assignment based on something you did. You legitimately are one of my best students I ever had, but I cannot help you out with this class. I'm like, okay, come on. Why not? Give me the specifics. Like, what's going on here? He said, Ryan, okay, so 430, the name of that class is Publish or Perish. The idea of that class is you and a group of students, a group of your fellow classmates, you guys come together to create a game. You don't just create a game, but you actually have to market it on social media. You have to like make all these deadlines. You have to do all this other stuff, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the problem wasn't just like the difficulty of it, like trying to make a game and etc. But the problem was also that I would be missing the culture of that class. And that was the problem, because he had the option to just like say okay, but he wanted to do it in good conscience, because the main thing about me graduating is that he said everyone who graduates from this major in this degree, it has to be indisputable. Like no one should be able to say like, oh, you shouldn't have graduated because you didn't do this. Like, or everyone shares that culture of publish or perish. Everyone has that zeitgeist of working with other people, and that's not something you can do with an independent study. You get what I'm saying? And so, you know, if you guys have like listened in to me on my streams or whatever, you probably like heard once or twice that like I'm actually not even like shy, but my biggest fear is being feared. I would typically like talk in a higher pitched voice because I probably don't want to scare someone, or you know, I don't make eye contact that much either because I feel like I have very intimidating eyes. And like that's a whole thing. And like when I tell you, when I drop that facade, you know, not in an angry way, but when I drop that facade, like, you know, leaned in on the desk, you know, got my hands like this, like big, okay, let's get down to business. Brought out my Riley energy from the Boondocks, my President Black, my Lambro Blue, that type of energy. And let me get this some context. So this goes back into my capstone, the Magic City Beats. So what is a capstone? For the people who don't know, a capstone is basically like, it's your masterworks, not necessarily a magnum opus, because that's something that people decide, you know, like after the fact. A capstone, in the sense of being a masterworks, is more so like, okay, you've gained all these skills and you've officially become a professional. What are you going to put together to show people like, okay, you are a professional, like you did become a Bachelor of Media Arts and Science? And for me, you know, that's the Magic City Beats, because it's supposed to be a culmination of my ability to tell stories, my abilities to program, my ability to make music, my ability to like do art, etc., etc. And then, you know, we're going to talk about like my friend once again. I can't talk about the specifics of her capstone for legal reasons, but it's very funny because she was working on it on herself when she was going to do it herself. But then eventually I guess she just went like, wait, what am I doing? I'm a project manager. So she put out flyers around the entire school, like getting people to volunteer, like, hey, do you guys want to help me on my capstone? Like it counts as an independent study. And like to me, again, that's what I respected most about that person, because it's not even just the idea of like creating a group project. It was the idea of doing that 5D chess move of understanding something so well. You created a situation where you are showcasing your best skills and then allowing other people who probably don't have like the best management for themselves and just giving them a place to just work and just having something where you and those other people can mutually benefit. Masterful. So back to where we left off. I looked at my professor like, hey, and we're just gonna call this friend Ashley, just so this person can have a name tied to him. So I looked at my professor, like, okay, what about Ashley's capstone? And like, the immediate reaction was just to say no. He thought about it like, he raised an eyebrows like, perhaps. And so it's not something that I could have just joined. Like, I had to volunteer, fill out a form to be approved to join a project. And he said, okay, there's no point of like going on this hypothetical if you're not even approved. So go talk to her. Immediately texted her on Discord like, hey, this is really important. I got to talk to you later. And she's like, okay, yeah, sure. What's up? So I call her later on Discord. Immediately, I need to join your project to graduate. And I didn't say that to like, you know, warrant pity, but more so like, this is a serious situation. It's not like some last minute on a whim type thing. But the reason I'm signing up this late is because I actually need it. And it's like, okay, yeah, sure, Ryan. Like that should be fine. Like we can always use more writers. Like, no. I'm not coming on as a writer. I'm your musician. And like the way that I could just hear her voice light up and like, oh my gosh, Ryan, we don't have one of those. That would be perfect. Yeah, go ahead and send your portfolio. So yeah, I go to the Google form, I fill it out. I link my portfolio. I add in those 2 songs that I put on YouTube not too long ago. And you know, not too long after, it's like, and I'm like, so you know, that's squared away. So next TTRPG class, because that's when we're all there, me, Ashley, my professor. And so like we get down and talk, and like, you know, he's talking to her, it's like, he's talking like, okay, so you're putting Ryan on your project as an independent study for this one class. Okay, so he needs to do this, that, and this. And he also needs to have a schedule for that, and this. And then you also need to know that when this is gonna happen and when that's gonna happen. And like the way he was just talking to her, while I was just sitting in my chair like this, I felt like a delinquent in juvenile detention. Do y'all understand me? Like I felt like my guidance counselor was talking to my mom about probation. Anyway, that aside, so like, you know, she's like, yeah, sure, yeah, I understand, blah, 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 blah. The next morning, you know, we get this email from our professor, like, hey, I need like official documentation for Ryan's schedule for next semester. And like, because again, my professor could have just approved me if he wanted to, but he wanted to do it in good conscience, and also in case anyone dogged him, like, okay, hey, I know you like this student, but you can't like just give him special treatment, etc., etc. But then he can just be like, no, look right here, look at the Carfax. Like that's basically the main thing, right? And so me, when I looked at that, I was intimidated. I was like, okay, gotta check my email. All right, gotta close my email. I was like, this is a problem for future Ryan. Within an hour, my friend made the most official documentation I've ever seen in my life. Like, and this document was 2 pages long. Emails don't even have pages, but this document was 2 pages long. And she was all like, Ryan's a valuable member of our team. He's our only musician. He's gonna help out with this, that, and that, and this. He's gonna do this on these days and that days, and he's gonna do this, that, and that, and that, and this. And I was just looking at that email like, did she just, he said no pickles? The Department of Media Arts and Science? That's pretty gangster. So anyway, a couple of days later, eventually, I did get approved for that independent study, so that definitely was stressful. So yeah, I got approved for the class, got the class immediately, and then like, you know, went about my day rest of the semester. You know, we got into a group meeting for her project, me and a bunch of other team leads, and etc. And you know, eventually in that meeting, she came up and talked to me. She said like, hey Ryan, you know, when do you think you'll be able to make like the main theme for the game, for the project? I was like, you know what, I think I can get something to you by tonight. He's like, whoa, tonight? Ooh, I was gonna give you like a couple of weeks, but like if you can knock it out tonight, go ahead. And so, you know, I went back home that night, like I come up to my chair and I just sit down exactly like this and just like stared at this white wall. Bro. Outside of not understanding completely what my advisor was saying, the reason I didn't take 430 that semester was because I took music theory. Because I was like, okay, well, if I can take this class next semester, then I want to like build up my skills and then focus on my specialization before I graduate, like, because that made sense to me. So the reason I was in this situation was because of music theory. The reason I'm getting out of this situation because of music theory. That's poetic. And a lot of my friends, like, God has a way, and like, whew, I can't deny that, I really can't. After getting home, the most empathetic I've been in a minute. A couple of like things that happened in my personal life that I can't really get into that much. Some tragedy, some deaths, and things of that nature. But it's the most empathetic I've been in a while, the most vulnerable I've been in a while. Well, not emotionally vulnerable, but more so like the type of vulnerable you feel when you're naked, but you stopped caring. Does that make sense? It's like that. Throughout this entire semester, I've been bleeding. Now I'm crying. Like, this is my victory lap for this semester, and I've worked so hard to get here. Like, I'm finally here, but like it doesn't feel, it's an indecipherable feeling, right? And so like even in my music theory report that I have to turn in along with my final assignment, I said like, I want to create a song that is basically this feeling. And in my report, I told my music theory professor that I wanted to make a song that sounded as if it was inviting the listener to cry, and then gently saying to them afterward, okay, come on, let's go get some ice cream. Overall, I wanted the song to be positive, so I didn't want it to be sad or bittersweet, but I didn't want it to be too happy either, because, something that's too happy is something that also invites indifference. And not to say like, I didn't want to say like, okay, all the bad things are over, everything's happy now, woohoo, yay. No. It's more so like, hey, you've been through a lot. It's time to grieve, because ultimately it's a song of healing. And for a lot of people, for a lot of things, healing is painful. But I want to make something that like just, takes the listener like, hey, you've been through a lot. It's okay to grieve. It's okay to cry about this right now. But like, you did it. Celebrate that. And what I ended up with really surprised me, because it's not even what surprised me is that I liked the song that I made, but more so of how simplistic it was. Like, it wasn't like overly complicated. It was just like down to earth. And what did that sound like? I can't show you because NDA. So yeah, that's unfortunate. Like I said, my friend Ashley made a studio, and like that's under NDA, so I can't even show anything. But how about this? If it hasn't happened yet, in the description it's gonna say have not elaborated. But if it doesn't say that, then you should be able to check the description. So check the description. And my professor, he definitely loved the assignment, because I turned it in late, 7 hours late to be specific, and he still gave me full credit for like the assignment itself, because I was also supposed to turn it in with like the music sheet, but like I was so tired when I finished the song. I was just looking at that like, okay, gotta make the A, gotta make the I wasn't having it. But that's been my entire semester. A lot of it, at least around the end of it, mostly revolved around my friend, who I, again, genuinely appreciate to death and back. Not to death, because that's selfishly selfless. So to death and back. And with that said, I also want to tell you guys, Happy New Year's. And I know a lot of us have just been surviving, but I hope that you guys are allowed to, or at least have allowed yourselves to heal, to grieve for all the bad things that you went through also. In addition to that, I've been doing a lot of things also. First things first, I opened up a studio. Is it official? I don't really know the process. Like, I put in the application, I paid the money, but then like I don't get the whole process. So I don't want to say the name of my studio until like I get the official okay from the government themselves. So stay tuned on that. My New Year's resolution is to not necessarily be more active on YouTube, because I've definitely tried. My New Year's resolution is to get 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, and also to be a bit more active on other social medias, particularly TikTok and Twitch. I should be able to become an affiliate now. Yeah, that's in the works. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm going to make not necessarily the effort, because I've always been making the effort. I'm gonna be uploading a lot more on YouTube. Or hold on, I don't want to say that either. I'm gonna be uploading a lot more consistently on YouTube. But that is it for me. That is it for this video. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope my soothing voice with the lovely addition of my visage have made your day in some way. So until next time, peace.